Is the government too weak to stand up to the energy companies?
If we really want to deal with high energy prices in this country, there is only one solution. That is getting more supply, and that is fracking on a massive scale throughout Britain.
Okay. For capitalism to really work, you have to interfere. And just as in the past, we put a tax on utility companies when they overcharged, and just as the Conservative Party in the early 1980s put a tax on North Sea oil because there were excessive profits there, these are the moments when politicians interfere in the market for the good of the public.
What Tristram says would be more compelling if, when Labour was in power, we hadn't started with 14 energy companies and ended with 6. I mean,
how do you get more to come back in now? What do you do?
First of all, we want more investment in the industry, and we've seen some announcements today. The Chancellor's been overseas, and we're going to have more investment. We need to diversify away from being completely reliant on fossil fuels.
Yeah, but you said more companies.
And we need more companies.
How do you get them in, say, to gas or to oil?
We've got 2 new, smaller companies in the marketplace. We want more competition.
What about giving up some of this green stuff
and we need more
costs over 11% on people's bills?
I think what we need to do...
You want to go through that and say we could cross some of this off?
Well, what we need to do is we need to move away from a dependence on imported gas. We need a mix of energy supplies. We need some more nuclear. We need renewable energy. We need some gas, and we need some coal.
Is it fair to say that privatisation of the energy companies hasn't worked, and that the only way to bring down the prices is to renationalise them?
Is that your view? Let's just hold on to that. And the third row from the back.
Peter O'Bourne was probably right. When the Labour Party was last in, they allowed the producers to merge with the distributors, which has distorted the market. They installed a whole set of green energy policies which are taking an ever-increasing proportion of the bills. And a lot of the investment in infrastructure is to tie in windmills and other uneconomic energy sources.
But do you think the government can stand up to the energy companies, which was the question?
I don't think they should stand up to energy companies. They should get out of the way of the energy companies and stop putting on extra taxes and inefficient energy, and forcing us to use inefficient energy sources.
Okay. Diane James.
Well, thank you for all your comments, ladies and gentlemen. I'm listening to this argument and just thinking, I've got Ed Miliband and David Cameron completely out of touch with what's going on out there. You've got one political party leader saying fixed prices. Well, you can do that. That's already been found. There's fixed rates out there. And you've got another one suggesting that suddenly there's going to be this magical new company who's going to be completely immune to what's happening with the market out there and is suddenly going to make price of energy massively cheaper. This blame culture, it worries me a little bit. You know, we've had bash the bankers, we're, bashing the next sector in the economy. When it comes down to it, if we took out this huge element of the EU obligations in terms of energy, the reliance that we've now got on imported gas to make up for the fact we've closed so many coal-fired power stations, we've taken away an indigenous power source that we had here, and we're now saying we're going to go for fracking, which I agree with Peter on, I would do, because that's a UKIP policy. But, that's going to take at least 10 years before it comes on stream to such an extent that will make up for the deficit we're in.
So it's the EU's fault, according to UKIP, not surprisingly.
It's one element of the fault.
Everything's the EU's fault.
You might well think so, Mark, but when it comes down to it, we've got this emphasis on the renewable sector that's meant to suddenly, like a white charger, come into the energy market.
So you take out that 11% or so that's spent on all different kinds
absolutely, and, the gentleman made the point in terms of inefficient wind turbines, for instance.
What about home improvements, which cost pretty nearly half for the bill?
What was it, 12 households have taken up the Green Deal? 12 households? I mean,
It adds £47 to the fuel bill.
Absolutely. What a waste of money, everybody. What a waste of money.
Okay. You, sir, in the third row.
The problem with capitalism in this instance is that there's no competition. So who do you switch to?
So now we have a discussion about fracking. The only reason we're discussing fracking is because of lobbyists exerting power. It will not bring down energy prices. It's locking us onto a fossil fuel future, which we don't need. And this is only weeks after the IPCC report saying we need to move away from fossil fuels.
Instead of listening to sort of whinging from left-wing politicians about the cartels which don't actually exist, let's have a bit of long-term thought, please, Mr. Hunt.
Well, I'll tell you exactly.
Can the UK cope with any more immigration after Christmas?
Diane James, UKIP has strong views on immigration.
We do indeed, and thank you for your question. I don't believe we can. It's as simple as that. We've got no idea, I'm sure everyone will agree, exactly how many people are going to come from the two countries in question, where the current restrictions on them coming into the UK...
Bulgaria and Romania, you're talking about.
I'm talking about Romania and Bulgaria. But what we do know, for instance, is that there's 2 million of them in Spain. They've already made that move. The likelihood, therefore, of them coming to the UK is pretty high. We also know that the government will not admit what sort of forecast they have. And then we've got this latest EU Commissioner report and this whole issue of over 600,000 inactive EU migrants here already, 73% increase in the number that haven't got a job. And what that does mean, if we translate that, and I think we can translate that, I'm not going to detract from that, there is going to be a pressure when these two countries, their restrictions are lifted and those people are going to come here. And they are going to come here. It's a very, very nice deal coming to the UK in terms of access to benefits. And I'm sure Mark is going to try and come back on me and say, well, we've got this under control. The Coalition, the Conservatives, haven't got it under control.
Well, what would you have a government do that was within the law of the EU, of which we're members, until UKIP gets its way?
I wouldn't be messing about with this discussion of repatriation of powers. It would just be a straightforward, no, they cannot come in, and the way to achieve that is out of the EU. It's as simple as that.
The idea that this is all about the EU and there's nothing we can do, which is UKIP's contention, is nonsense. The government's reduced net migration by a third since we've come to power.
Mark, you know that's rubbish.
No, that is absolutely true.
It's not,
Diane.
because you can't count them in and you can't count them out.
Those are robust figures that the Independent Office for National Statistics put together. Clearly some people will come here. We'll have to see what happens, but they can go to 8 other European countries, and we haven't made a forecast. There are no secret
You're not
forecasts.
made a forecast?
No, we haven't.
Why haven't you made a forecast?
Because our experts have advised us, have said that trying to make a forecast when you've got 8 other countries...
There's a country you can go and talk to people. You can survey.
Well,
you survey public opinion in this country every 5 minutes of the day, both parties. You alter your policies to fit every little tiny change, and you're saying you can't go to Romania and Bulgaria and ask people what their plans are.
I'm a district councillor in the neighbouring borough, which is Hart District Council, and one of our biggest issues is the development of all the houses that have to put in. We just had our local plan thrown away by the government because they're saying we factored in a zero net migration number, and they've said absolutely not. That's not the case. You have to develop more houses. We're talking about 3,500 houses in Hart District Council over the next 15 years. Yeah. Now the government practically wants us to double that. Where are we going to put 7,000 new houses in Hart District Council? How are we going to have the bandwidth in our schools and our hospitals and so on and so forth to accommodate all of those people?
What good will it do if he finds out that the gentleman from Hart is correct and he's got to build 7,000 instead of 3,500 homes?
Because you've got to plan.
I'm going to give you one fact, which is absolutely central to this whole argument, and that is that the average wage in Bulgaria and Romania is approximately half the minimum wage in Britain. It does have, I'm afraid, I thought the councillor up there described it absolutely beautiful, a massive effect on public services, schools, housing, all of these things.
The Tory elite in this area have got it totally wrong. In my town, we're close to waiting 21 days for a doctor's appointment. In my county, they're about to pull down 4 care homes. Those care homes are the family silver. They love, they look after, they manage our elderly well. We're going to pull them down and we're going to put it out to privatisation. We are so out of touch in this area, it's unbelievable.
Hold on, let's finish the point.
They have completely lost control of what is happening at a local level. The cuts have gone far too far. It's time to start rebuilding the fabric of our society rather than the Tory way of destroying it.
And can I just how is that relevant to immigration from Bulgaria and
Quite
Romania?
quite simple. We cannot take any more. Our county cannot absorb any more. We are full. We are going to close to business pretty soon.
There's two things.
You're not alarmed at the open-door policy on both Bulgaria and Romania?
Well, we haven't got an open-door
Well, you have got
No, we haven't.
Who is not allowed in?
Other people come here to work.
So who isn't allowed in?
Well, we've tightened up...
In January the 1st?
We've tightened up the access to benefits. We've tightened up the access to services and access, for example, to social housing. So local councils, for example, can prioritise access to social housing.
So you make it undesirable to come here, is what
And if they come here to work and contribute and pay taxes and make a contribution, I have no problem with that. But
the discussion has nothing to do with xenophobia. It's all about jobs, services. And we still have large amounts of youth unemployment in this country. How is more immigration? What effect is that going to have on that?
I think... Hold on.
We have a housing crisis. Like, it was on the news last night. Thousands of people are living in bed and breakfast with their families. Like, thousands of people are going to come to this country, and where are they going to stay? There's nowhere for them to stay. And it is easy to say it's xenophobic, which a horrible amount of it is, but behind there is a logistical argument.
I don't disagree with that. Please, I'm not calling it xenophobic.
Let me go to the questioner up there at the back, and then I come to you.
I really feel for our young people, and... well done. Yeah.
Diane James, brief point.
Yes, despite what Mark would like to convince us, the Conservatives and the Coalition are not controlling immigration. And I'm a fellow borough councillor, by the way, so I empathise and sympathise with you completely. The comment has been made that even with the current national housing targets, we would have to build one new home every 7 minutes. And if we don't control immigration, when we get to the end of the next 15-year programme that the coalition government has introduced, we're going to have to embark on another huge round of house building. Now, we've got to start saying enough is enough at some stage and bring control back into this country as to where the infrastructure goes, where the housing goes, where it's allocated, and that is not happening with Mark and his team in government at the moment. I don't know whether you've seen the same issues and the papers that have come out. Allocating the housing as it is, you can drive a coach and horses through it. It's an absolute nonsense.
OK, I can take one more point.
Should I still believe my mother's advice that you can always trust a police officer?
I think it's fair to say that these three officers have made no comment since, and the chief constables who decided not to discipline them have asked to go before a parliamentary committee to explain why. So there may be... I mean, there are two stories.
And Andrew Mitchell still has not made an official complaint. Let's put this all into context. I mean, I'd like to see a statement from him. I mean, to go back to your question very quickly, I think our element of trust has been severely undermined. And, you know, the next time, I hope it isn't stopped for speeding points or something like that, but, you know, if I'm going to be questioning, am I going to get a rightful hearing? But what worries me more than anything is what was effectively a relatively simple spat that involved rather colourful language, if we look at this, has suddenly developed into something much more serious. And the seriousness of it is this the police fighting against the cutbacks and using this as ammunition, or is it just the usual cover-up type scenario? And that's what worries me more than anything. You know, are we just watching this battle being fought out over something very, very fundamental? And as you say, recognising your question, undermining our trust in the police.
The Independent Police Complaints Commission did say, of course, that they were running a successful, I quoted, high-profile anti-cuts media campaign.
Absolutely.
Should teachers' pay be performance-related?
I don't actually see the need for performance-related pay. And, you know, that's my straight answer on this, because the minute we start putting targets in place, the minute we start engineering abuse of those targets. And we've already seen a situation where employers have lost confidence in exam results, no matter how well the children think they've done and how proud the parents might be. We've seen teachers already manipulating results, you know, focusing on certain students that are at the lower end to push them up into a different category. So the minute we start social engineering on that scale in the teaching profession, I think, is the wrong way to go.
Okay.
We've got a very, very clear message out there, which is, at the moment, is that there's been too much political interference in the education system. You've only got to look at countries like Singapore, which maintains its system unchanged for years. It's held up as being, a top model in terms of student quality output and this sort of thing. And, Michael Gove, to give him some credit, he's going back to some fundamentals, which is a good, solid syllabus, focus on, if you like, the 3 R's, all this sort of thing. And that's what's needed if we're going to prepare our young people in a global and a very demanding world. Simple as that.